The first ship landed just outside Bitter Creek, Tennessee. Population: 2,341. Nearest military base: 200 miles away. Strategic importance: none. And that was exactly why the Carthuan Empire chose it. From orbit, Bitter Creek looked harmless: miles of woods, muddy roads, rusted trucks, broken barns, and old men sitting on porches. Primitive. Backwards. Easy. The Carthuan had conquered 12 worlds. They specialized in psychological warfare. Drop terror troops into isolated populations, wipe them out fast, spread fear, and let panic soften the planet before full invasion. Their scanners detected low technology, sparse infrastructure, and what appeared to be recreational projectile devices. The invasion commander, Zaltor, laughed when he reviewed the data. Projectile weapons. Chemical combustion. These creatures are centuries behind. His second-in-command clicked its mandibles. Shall we deploy pacification drones? No, Zaltor sneered. Send hunters. Let the species learn fear. At 2:13 a.m., the first drop pod slammed into Miller's cornfield. 3 enormous biomechanical soldiers emerged, 8 feet tall, armored in black alloy, plasma rifles glowing blue. They marched straight toward the nearest farmhouse. Inside, 72-year-old Earl Jensen was asleep in his recliner with his dog, Buck. Buck woke first. A low growl. Then barking. Earl cracked one eye open. Ain't no coyote dumb enough to come this close. Then the front door exploded inward. Buck lunged. A plasma bolt turned him to ash. Earl stared. Silence. The alien stepped through the smoke. It scanned him. Primitive life form identified. Earl looked at Buck's ashes. Then at the thing standing in his living room. Then slowly reached for the shotgun beside his chair. The alien actually paused, amused. Projectile weapon detected. Non-threat. Earl pumped the shotgun. CHK. Second shot, neck joint. Armor cracked. The alien dropped. Earl spat tobacco juice onto its corpse. Non-threat, my wrinkled ass. Outside, the other 2 invaders turned. Just as floodlights snapped on across neighboring properties. Porches lit up. Barn lights flared. Truck engines roared. CB radios crackled to life. Earl's got company. Cornfield lights just lit. Y'all see that fire? Then came the sound the Carthuan had never heard before. Hundreds of gun racks unlocking. Sheriff Dale Mercer had seen meth labs, tornadoes, moonshine explosions, and one very angry escaped ostrich. But aliens? That was new. Still, Dale was not a man prone to panic. He grabbed his rifle, got in his truck, and drove straight toward the Jensen farm. On the way, he passed something the Carthuan tactical AI had failed to predict. Not fleeing civilians. Armed volunteers. Pickup trucks loaded with deer rifles. ATVs. Homemade explosives. Night vision scopes. And Bubba Ray Collins towing an anti-hog helicopter minigun he may or may not have legally owned. Dale. Bubba yelled. You tellin' me space goblins just vaporized Earl's dog? Dale chambered around. Looks that way. Bubba's expression darkened. Oh, they done screwed up. The Carthuan deployed Wave 2 at dawn. 50 hunter drones spread through forests, fields, and swamps. Their mission: suppress resistance. Instead, they entered Appalachia. The first drone vanished near Cooper's Ridge. Recovered footage showed why. It tracked a heat signature into dense woods. No target visible. Then. A deer call. The drone turned. Tripwire. Shotgun blast. Bear trap. The camera spun as something painted in mud tackled it off a ravine. Final visual. A man in overalls screaming, "Welcome to deer season." Across Bitter Creek, the invaders began disappearing. One by one. Plasma superiority didn't matter when your enemy knew every swamp, creek bed, cave system, and tree stand for 50 miles. The Carthuan had thermal optics. The locals had camouflage older than some nations. The aliens had drones. The locals had duck blinds. The aliens had invasion doctrine. The locals had redneck engineering. By nightfall, the town scoreboard read: humans, angry. Aliens, missing. Part 3, the woods fought back. Commander Zaltor was furious. How does a pre-industrial farming zone resist elite conquest units? An analyst answered carefully. They appear to be hunting us. Zaltor slammed a claw into the console. Impossible. Then distress signals flooded in. Unit 12 ambushed. Unit 7 trapped. Forests contain explosives. Unknown projectile penetrated optic sensor. Request extraction. Then came the worst transmission. A Carthuan warrior, bleeding blue, hiding beneath wreckage. I saw them. Humans. No. What? They're women. Static. In Bitter Creek, alien psychology collapsed when they encountered Tammy Lee Harper. Tammy was a former competitive sharpshooter, mother of 4, and had personally killed wild boars with a crossbow. When a Carthuan patrol entered her property, they found warning signs. No trespassing. You will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. They did not understand human humor. They did understand .308 rounds. Tammy eliminated 6 before finishing her coffee. Soon, stories spread through the invasion fleet. Not military reports. Campfire horror. About invisible humans in tree lines. About old men who smiled before detonating propane traps. About children who baited scouts into mud pits. About banjo music heard moments before death. The Carthuan had invaded Earth expecting conquest. Instead, they had landed in the galaxy's largest predator preserve. News finally reached the rest of Earth. At first, the media called Bitter Creek an isolated anomaly. Then footage leaked. Farmers ambushing plasma tanks with fertilizer bombs. Grandmas firing from church bell towers. One man weaponizing a combine harvester. The internet exploded. Memes became morale. Take me to your leader. Best I can do is Uncle Rick. Across America, and then the world, rural communities mobilized. Hunters. Trappers. Survivalists. Indigenous trackers. Mountain clans. Every underestimated, backwoods, population became a nightmare theater for alien ground forces. Because the Carthuan understood war. But humans? Humans understood hunting. And there's a difference. War is about armies. Hunting is personal. By the time Earth's militaries fully mobilized, the countryside had already done the impossible. They taught an interstellar empire to fear the trees. 3 weeks later, Commander Zaltor ordered total planetary withdrawal. Official reason. Unexpected ecological hostility. Unofficial truth. The Carthuan had lost more soldiers in rural North America than in their last 3 planetary invasions combined. As the last ships fled orbit, one final human transmission was broadcast from Bitter Creek. Sheriff Dale, sitting on his truck, bloodied but grinning. Y'all come back now, why here? Then Bubba leaned into frame. We still got ammo. The message was translated into every known Carthuan dialect. And for generations afterward, Carthuan hatchlings were warned. Behave, or the humans from the woods will come. Because across the stars, Earth gained a terrifying new reputation. Not because of its armies. Not because of its technology. But because one arrogant empire learned the hard way. Never invade a species whose rednecks treat alien invasions like hunting season. The Carthuan Empire did not make the same mistake twice. Their war council studied every catastrophic failure from Bitter Creek. Dozens of commanders had reviewed the footage in disbelief. Invisible hunters in forests. Explosive livestock traps. Grandmothers with scoped rifles. And one deeply traumatizing incident involving a lawn chair, a cooler full of beer, and a man named Cletus who somehow downed a scout ship with homemade fireworks. So this time, the Carthuan adapted. No rural zones. No isolated settlements. No woodland insertions. No regions with abnormal civilian weapons density. A new invasion map of Earth appeared. Red zones covered North America's backwoods, Siberia, parts of South America, and several suspiciously dangerous islands. One continent, however, was flagged as ideal. Australia. Population clustered on coastlines. Vast interior emptiness. Minimal strategic military resistance in the outback. Harsh ecosystem, but no significant civilization density. Commander Vrax smiled. At last. A logical battlefield. Even Earth governments panicked when they detected the descent trajectory. Sydney? No. Melbourne? No. Perth? No. The Carthuan were avoiding major defenses entirely. Their fleet descended straight into the Australian outback. Miles of red desert. No skyscrapers. No armored divisions. No visible threat. Perfect. The first dropships landed at 3:47 a.m. near an isolated cattle station west of Alice Springs. Elite squads emerged in formation, scanners active. Heat levels extreme. Terrain barren. Biological threats. Minor. Then the screaming started. Not human screaming. Carthuan screaming. The first casualty was a scout named Rek. His squad found him convulsing on the ground less than 4 minutes after deployment. Cause of death. Something tiny. Something with too many legs. Commander Vrax stared at the autopsy. Local fauna. A human intercepted emergency radio frequency answered. Yeah, mate. Welcome to Australia. The Carthuan had prepared for ballistic resistance. They had prepared for chemical warfare. They had even developed anti-human psychological conditioning. They had not prepared for box jellyfish, funnel web spiders, brown snakes, saltwater crocodiles, cassowaries, fire ants, paralysis ticks, or the deeply personal hatred of magpies. Within 12 hours, the invasion became a biological apocalypse. Dropships landed in sand dunes. Only to discover those dunes contained things that burrowed. Patrols sought water sources, only to learn those water sources had crocodiles. Infantry took shelter under rocks, bad decision. Medical AI systems overloaded trying to identify 17 simultaneous venom types. One Carthuan platoon survived an entire firefight with human defenders. Then lost 19 soldiers to an angry herd of cattle stampeding through camp because someone startled them. Earth's military attempted coordinated response. Australia's government response was simpler. A public emergency broadcast was sent nationwide. Yeah nah, aliens in the outback. Handle it. And Australians did. Farmers armed themselves. Ranchers mobilized helicopters. Miners repurposed blasting charges. Indigenous trackers, whose ancestors had crossed the land for over 60,000 years, began guiding resistance forces through terrain the invaders couldn't comprehend. But then came the moment that shattered Carthuan morale forever. The Emu Incident. Historical archives had mentioned something called the Great Emu War. Carthuan analysts dismissed it as primitive satire. It was not satire. When one Carthuan division disrupted migratory patterns near Western Australia, thousands of emus stampeded directly through invasion supply lines. Towering birds. Fast. Chaotic. Unstoppable. Alien plasma targeting systems failed. Why? Because emus do not move like sane creatures. They zigzagged. They kicked. They smashed sensor arrays. One commander reportedly shouted, "Why are the feathered ones bulletproof?" A captured Australian laughed so hard he had to sit down before answering. "Mate, even we lost a war to those." By week 2, the Carthuan officially classified Earth's wildlife as a higher combat threat than several human militaries. As invasion panic spread globally, Australian resistance adopted a new psychological weapon. Education. Hijacked alien channels began broadcasting archived Earth wildlife shows. A cheerful human in khaki appeared on every Carthuan frequency. Crikey! Look at this little beauty. Then followed footage of crocodiles, venomous snakes, and humans voluntarily wrestling both. Alien troops were horrified. "You fight these creatures, for entertainment?" The answer came from an Aussie sniper outside Darwin. "Entertainment? Nah, that bloke was teachin'. Then Australia escalated further. Road trains became armored convoys. Crop dusters became attack craft. Bogan engineers weaponized everything from beer kegs to cattle prods. One legendary mechanic named Jazza mounted anti-ship missiles onto a mining truck the size of a small apartment. When asked why, he simply replied, "Because Mad Max wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual." The vehicle became known as the Ute of Judgment. By day 21, Commander Vrax understood the horrifying truth. Earth did not merely contain dangerous humans. Earth itself was dangerous. Every biome was a death trap. America had hunters. Australia had evolution turned hostile. Vrax ordered retreat. But retreat across Australia was worse than invasion. Navigation systems failed in remote zones. Fuel convoys vanished. Survivors fled into deserts and discovered heatstroke. Or snakes. Or both. The final Carthuan command ship barely escaped orbit after a collision with something no one thought possible. A kangaroo launched through an open cargo ramp during evacuation chaos. Black box recordings recovered one final transmission. "This planet is cursed." Back on Earth, Australians celebrated the only logical way possible. Barbecue. As burning alien wreckage lit the desert sky, one exhausted farmer flipped sausages and watched the stars. His daughter asked, "Dad, you reckon they'll come back?" He took a sip, shrugged, and said, "Not unless they're stupider than the last lot." Across known space, the Carthuan Empire rewrote all invasion doctrine. Do not invade Earth. Additional note. Absolutely never land in Australia. Because humans were dangerous. But Australia? Australia was what happened when a death world developed a sense of humor. And somewhere, in the endless void between stars, alien children learned a new bedtime warning. Sleep now. Or the Australians will teach you about wildlife. After Bitter Creek, the Carthuan learned to fear forests. After Australia, they learned to fear ecosystems. So for their third invasion attempt, the High War Council demanded one thing. Find the least aggressive human region. No rednecks. No death animals. No chaotic desert survivalists. They needed somewhere polite. Somewhere civilized. Somewhere psychologically unlikely to respond with violent unpredictability. After analyzing Earth's global broadcasts, diplomacy records, and internet culture, Carthuan intelligence selected the perfect target. Canada. The data seemed flawless. National stereotypes included kindness, apologies, universal healthcare, and recreational ice sports. Low aggression indicators. High civility. Minimal invasion risk profile. Supreme Commander Threx personally approved Operation Silent Snow. The Canadians, he declared, will surrender before conflict begins. Even Earth's major defense networks were confused. The invasion fleet bypassed strategic U.S. defense zones. Ignored Europe. Avoided Asia entirely. And descended directly into northern Canada. Specifically, Nunavut. In January. At night. During a blizzard. The first dropships landed smoothly for approximately 6 seconds. Then the cold hit. The Carthuan were technologically advanced. Their armor resisted plasma, radiation, and corrosive atmospheres. It did not, however, handle -47 degrees Celsius wind chill particularly well. Within minutes, visor systems iced. Hydraulic joints slowed. Weapons batteries drained faster than projected. One elite soldier, Val, stepped into snow waist deep and transmitted. "Commander, the ground is broken." "It is not broken." "Then why am I sinking?" Human military resistance never arrived. Because the weather got there first. Entire invasion squads vanished in whiteout conditions before seeing a single Canadian. Dropships iced over. Navigation satellites struggled. One Carthuan tank froze solid on a lake it did not realize was frozen water. Then the ice cracked. Recovery teams marked cause of loss as environmental betrayal. The first humans encountered were not soldiers. They were Inuit hunters. And unlike previous Carthuan mistakes, these humans did not panic. They observed. Quietly. Patiently. The invaders' thermal signatures glowed across snowfields like flares. To the Carthuan, they were using advanced stealth systems. To the hunters, they looked like idiots wearing lanterns. The first patrol disappeared near Baffin Island. No energy readings. No distress call. Just silence. Then one helmet camera was recovered. It showed a snowstorm. Heavy breathing. Movement. And finally, a figure in white camouflage standing inches away. No sound. No warning. Just eyes. Then static. Across Invasion Command, fear spread. Where are the human cities? There are none nearby. Where are their armies? They may not need them. Then came the second problem. Canadians. Not angry Canadians. Helpful Canadians. A disabled Carthuan scout was discovered half-frozen by a remote family in Yukon. Expecting execution, it raised its weapon weakly. Instead, an elderly woman wrapped it in blankets, handed it soup, and said, "Oh, you poor thing." By week 2, the Carthuan adapted to weather. Barely. They built heated camps, reinforced shields, and survival protocols. Then spring migration began. No one warned them about Canada geese. At first, Carthuan sensors dismissed them as harmless avian lifeforms. Then one officer approached a nesting zone. Recovered audio. Small feathered creature detected. Honk. Threat level negligible. Honk. Why is it advancing? Honk. Why are there more? Transmission lost. Across multiple sectors, geese attacks caused widespread chaos. Supply lines disrupted. Medics overwhelmed. Morale obliterated. Carthuan soldiers began refusing patrol near lakes. One officer submitted a formal battlefield report describing geese as winged hatred. Canadian commanders, reviewing intercepted footage, laughed so hard one general reportedly spilled coffee on classified documents. Desperate to reclaim initiative, Commander Threx targeted a populated urban center. A small town in Saskatchewan. Strategic analysis. Flat terrain. Simple infrastructure. Low threat. What they didn't know. It was playoff season. When dropships interrupted a local hockey game, hundreds of civilians poured from the arena. Still wearing skates. Still carrying sticks. Still very upset. What followed became one of the shortest battles in invasion history. Carthuan troops had superior weapons. Canadians had decades of stick handling, pain tolerance, and a culturally ingrained willingness to throw hands over frozen rubber. One alien commander watched in horror as a defense line formed naturally. Not military formation. Power play formation. The final battlefield transmission from Saskatchewan was simple. They're organized. Followed immediately by, why are they faster on ice? By week 2, the Carthuan adapted to weather. Barely. They built heated camps, reinforced shields, and survival protocols. Then spring migration began. No one warned them about Canada geese. At first, Carthuan sensors dismissed them as harmless avian lifeforms. Then one officer approached a nesting zone. Recovered audio. Small feathered creature detected. Honk. Threat level negligible. Honk. Why is it advancing? Honk. Why are there more? Transmission lost. Across multiple sectors, geese attacks caused widespread chaos. Supply lines disrupted. Medics overwhelmed. Morale obliterated. Carthuan soldiers began refusing patrol near lakes. One officer submitted a formal battlefield report describing geese as winged hatred. Canadian commanders, reviewing intercepted footage, laughed so hard one general reportedly spilled coffee on classified documents. Desperate to reclaim initiative, Commander Threx targeted a populated urban center. A small town in Saskatchewan. Strategic analysis. Flat terrain. Simple infrastructure. Low threat. What they didn't know. It was playoff season. When dropships interrupted a local hockey game, hundreds of civilians poured from the arena. Still wearing skates. Still carrying sticks. Still very upset. What followed became one of the shortest battles in invasion history. Carthuan troops had superior weapons. Canadians had decades of stick handling, pain tolerance, and a culturally ingrained willingness to throw hands over frozen rubber. One alien commander watched in horror as a defense line formed naturally. Not military formation. Power play formation. The final battlefield transmission from Saskatchewan was simple. They're organized. Followed immediately by, why are they faster on ice?